again, is an important aspect of this. And how these vultures and criminals are then given all sorts of accolades and awards. It's horrific. Time magazine here making these creatures people of the year. The same magazine, by the way, run by a Knight of Malta who made Hitler Man of the Year back in the 19th. So just remember that. They kind of let us know, though, because certain of these prime ministers or presidents, later on after they move on, they get certain associations, they may even convert, like Blair converted, to let you know who's been calling the shots all along. And never let us forget that when it comes to the Vatican specifically and the Jesuit order and Opus Dei and all of these other orgs that they control, that this is absolutely a criminal syndicate. This is a group that literally worked behind both Benito Mussolini, Franco, and Adolf Hitler at the time. I mean, Pope Pius the 12th, he had an agreement, what's called a concordat, with Adolf Hitler and condoned all of his actions. Let's not forget that these are the same people who ran the rat line, who actually aided and abetted the leading Nazis to get out of Nazi Germany after the war. Let's not forget that Benito Mussolini is the man who gave back the Vatican its states. When you go and visit the Vatican today and you look at all those buildings, these are known as the Papal States, right? The Vatican. That was given back to them by Benito Mussolini, who, like Hitler on paper, is meant to be a pagan. Here is Pope Ratzinger giving the Nazi salute. Here are various other potentates. This goes for the Eastern Church as well as it does for the Western Church, giving the Nazi salute. If you read the works of Baron Avro Manhattan, he'll go into this. And then the same creatures are shaking the hands of the British royal family. You've always got to notice this particular junction between the royals and the religious clerics. I have it on tape. I have actually in my archive, I have got video evidence of the Guinness family, who are, by the way, connected to the Cecil family, an Illuminati family like the Spencers were. In their diaries, in their family albums, they have pictures of von Ribbentrop and Adolf Hitler. To this day, these big dynasties. The Guinness family will open their family albums and show you their family members standing right beside Hitler to this day, and they give no explanation of any of this. It's because they were in with them. The British aristocracy were calling the shots. Here's Prince Philip at a Nazi rally. Openly. But of course, what happens? People fall for the veneer. They fall for the whole fiasco, the portrayal on the media, the television. We have to be learning, we have to learn to see through this. And I went into this a lot for people who are interested in this in the Brotherhood of Death interview series we did. We went into this whole thing of the exact level of allegiances. And how these creatures are able to work on the fears and the paranoia and emphasize the divisions, you see, that split us one from the other. Their religion's meant to be about bringing everybody together and clearing the way so that you have clear understanding of reality. Is that what these creatures are doing? Again, you always only have to look at the symbolism involved, and the whole story unfolds. Why a Celtic cross? Why would Druidism be playing a part in this? Because Christianity originated not in Palestine, like you heard, or Galilee, but in Britain. It's nothing more than Neo-Druidism, a perverted version of it. Why the Lion and the Unicorn? What's British heraldry got to do with the Trinity Broadcasting Network of America? And of course, the symbolism is actually in plain view when you start to do your homework and be able to decode a lot of this. The solar symbols, the rituals, and then you start to understand why it's so important to these elites. I mean, do you think that they're still back in the Middle Ages? Thought we were meant to be modern here. But the amount of emphasis that they put on these incredibly arcane rituals also should have alerted us long, long time ago. And again, in the case of religion, as I talked about in my work, it's based on ancient stellar religion. There's nothing new under the sun. It's entirely based on astrotheology, which in itself appeals directly to that unconscious level of our minds. They've just appropriated all that. Well, they say they love the light. Well, how will they feel if we start shining that light they say they love back on their faces? Which is what this modern age is about, really. In regards to religion, the author Larry Flint, in his book Sex, Lies and Politics, said that throughout history, organized religion has been the greatest divisive force in human existence. Through wars, persecution and torture, it has caused more harm than any other idea since the beginning of time. And Flint and people like Wilhelm Reich also know the effect that that has on a person's biology, on their libido, on their sexuality, on their vision of their own selfhood, on the way that their masculine and feminine settings are made. There's also a huge tie-in with this. But the real expert on seeing through that veneer that you see that the media present was Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky in her Secret Doctrine Volume 3, which is the one that's out of print, hard to find. She says there are numbers of these mystic brotherhoods which have nothing to do with civilized countries, and it is in their unknown communities that are concealed the skeletons of the past. These adepts could, if they chose, lay claim to strange ancestry. Here's somebody who knew where they came from. Here's somebody who knew the importance of looking back into the past. She says in the same book, but there exists another class of adepts belonging to a brotherhood also and mightier than any other. They have to be ranked with the adepts of the black art. These are our Roman Catholic fathers and clergy, 100 times more learned in secret symbology and the old religion than our Orientalists will ever be. There are more profoundly learned Kabbalists in Rome and throughout Europe and America than is generally suspected. Thus are the brotherhoods of black adepts more powerful and dangerous than any host of Eastern occultists. And she says that while the real brothers died ignominious deaths, remember we spoke about the conflict in ancient times, while the real brothers died ignominious deaths, the spurious order which tried to step into their shoes became exclusively a branch of the Jesuits or Illuminati, under the immediate tutelage of the latter. True-hearted Masons ought to reject with horror any connection, let alone descent from these. So of course the campaign was to destroy her and to keep Masons from asking those questions, so that those lodges would never be there to serve mankind. Now they may say that now in imagery, but that's not what they're about. In fact, they're a filtration system to make sure that only the sick, perverted and demented get to the top to gain the reins of power. In fact, this also, if you really get into what she's saying here, you'll understand why some of you may have heard about that whole thing of Adolf Hitler, scaling down the so-called Freemasonic lodges in Germany. And history books will portray him as this wonderful anti-Masonic character. What a lot of nonsense. He's just expurging the kind of Masonry they don't want, they don't like. In other words, her good-hearted Masons. The people who might do something about this pestilence, or might not go along with the gig, you see. And so, the Christian author, Dr. James W. Wardner, in his book Unholy Alliances, he says that a British intelligence operation swept Madame Blavatsky aside, and she was replaced by British Fabian Society co-founder Annie Besant, and by Foster Bailey, a 33rd degree Mason, was a leader of the Theosophy Society. His wife Alice A. Bailey, remember we read her quote, founded the Lucius or Lucifer Trust. Alice Bailey was in the broad circles around the Queen Victoria, and she always sought wealthy and titled converts. Yeah, well, Madame Blavatsky didn't be hanging around no Queen Victorias. You read her work and she'll tell you what these people are. So she gets a bad rap, while people haven't done their homework. In her book Isis Unveiled, she said, "Let it not be imagined that we are influenced by personal feelings in any of our reflections on Masonry. So far from this being the case, we unhesitatingly proclaim our highest respect for the original purposes of the order. We say nothing against Masonry as it should be, but denounce it as, thanks to the intriguing clergy, both Catholic and Protestant, it now begins to be. Professedly the most absolute of democracies, it is practically the appendage of aristocracy, wealth and personal ambition."